Just found out my husband showed his coworkers and his friends naughty pictures of me. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. My husband and I have only been married a few months. Before that, we dated for 2 years. My husband works in a really remote area, so he's not with me most of the time. After we got married, we bought a house near my parents' house since he would be away for most of the time, and that way I could spend time with my family. There are a few things about my husband that really bother me, but for the most part, he is pretty good. He supports me financially while I'm in school to pursue my career. I just got an internship for a magazine, which has been my dream job. My husband and I started dating. Everything went really fast. He's really passionate. After a year of dating, he proposed, and of course I said yes. We have a great love life. I mean, great. We have a lot of chemistry together, and we're super attracted to each other. And one thing about my husband is he loves to show me off. He's like the opposite of a jealous husband. He loves when I wear cute, revealing clothes, which is not a bad thing, by the way. And whenever somebody hits on me, he loves it. He's proud to be my husband, and I'm proud to be his wife. But sometimes I feel like he's showing me off a little bit too much. Since he's away for work, he always asks me to send him, naughty pictures. Come to find out, he shows his coworkers. Part 2 is husband showed his friends and coworkers my naughty pictures. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. Here's how I found out he did it. Every single day, multiple times a day, he would ask me to send him naughty pictures. It actually became like a routine for me. I would even order cute lingerie on a weekly basis for this. One day, my husband sent me a message that was clearly for one of his friends. In the message, he said, "Check out this picture my wife just sent me." And then he proceeded to attach the picture I had just sent him. For the first 5 seconds, I thought he was joking. You see, I would never have expected him to do that. But after about 30 seconds, I came to. Realized he had sent it to me by mistake. I called him and he instantly turned off his phone. I called him about 10 more times, but it all went to voicemail. Finally, 3 hours later, he sends me a text message apologizing. He said that he had never showed his friends the pictures and that he promises to never do it again. And that this time the picture was too good to not share. And it gets worse. He told me his coworkers are always drooling over my Instagram pictures, so he just felt like sharing. He sent a whole other message talking about how sexy and beautiful I am. And guess what? He asked for another freaking picture. Part 3 is up. Husband showed his friends and coworkers naughty pictures of me. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. After he apologized, he basically asked me for more pictures. So I decided to ghost him for a week. After a week, he shows up to our house. When I opened the door, he started begging for forgiveness. He told me that he couldn't live without me, that he thought I was so beautiful he just wanted to share my pictures. I explained to him that what he did was a total violation of my trust and of my body. Thought of his coworkers and friends being able to see those pictures literally nauseated me. And of course, I was totally ashamed that my family and friends would find out. I mean, what if one of his friends told his wife and then she told me something? He told me he'd never do it again, and I accepted his apology. After that, we did the dirty and it was amazing. He had to go to work the very next day. And a few days later, he started asking me for more pictures. I have to trust the fact that he said he would never show those pictures to anybody again. So I started sending him pictures again. Only now it just doesn't feel the same. Before it was fun and I wanted to send him the pictures. Now I do it praying that he won't show it to anybody else. I've also come to realize that my husband knows how to manipulate me really well. Our sexy times are so good that he just gets me to do whatever he wants. Like taking those pictures. I really don't know if I should trust him, but at the same time, he's my husband. I feel like you guys will have good advice. What should I do?
Am I wrong for calling my sister's husband useless? My 17 female, sister 34 female called me saying that her work had an emergency and she needed to get there ASAP and needed me to watch her kids because no one else can. I rushed over there just to find her husband locked in his game room playing video games. I asked her why she called me over if he was home, and she said he didn't want to babysit because it was his only day off. Sister left and I started hanging with the kids. I was changing the baby's diaper and the other kids wanted a snack. I told them to ask their dad to make it for them because the baby had a blowout and it was going to take me a while to clean him up. Well, their dad sent them back upstairs and told them to ask me again. After cleaning the baby up, I made the kids a snack and their dad came out to eat and told me not to let the kids interrupt him on his day off. By the way, he works part-time from home 6 days a week. I kind of snapped at him and told him it was my day off too and that he's a useless fucking father and husband if his wife has to rely on her teenage sister rather than her own husband. He started telling me I was disrespectful and didn't understand how hard parenting is. And I told him he clearly doesn't understand how hard it is either since he considers parenting his own children babysitting. He ended up kicking me out and apparently my sister was forced to come home because he told her she needed to figure it out since I'm her sister. I feel like I may have been the asshole because my sister is mad at me, her husband is mad at me, my mom is mad at me for causing drama, but my dad thinks it's funny and agrees with me. I definitely didn't need to call him names, but I just hate this guy so much. We have argued about things in the past as well, so we already don't have a great relationship. My sister is saying I need to apologize to him and he's threatening to never let me in the kids' lives if I keep disrespecting him. So, am I the asshole here? For everyone that has asked, no, he does not take care of the kids normally. My sister takes them to daycare during the day and then picks them up on her way home. She is the breadwinner and primary caretaker. Also, I got a few questions of, does she pay you? Not exactly, but she will randomly take me on expensive shopping sprees and will regularly buy things from my Amazon wishlist instead.
Story time about the worst night of my life. Alright, so a little background information. When this all happened, I was 16, about to turn 17, literally in like a month, I think. And my little sister was 13, about to turn 14 in like 1 week. Well, since I was 5 years old, my mom and my dad had been separated. And I want to say whenever I was 7 or 8, my mom had started dating this new guy. And my sister and I absolutely loved him. When we were younger, my mom had a lot of different guys in and out of our lives. And this was the one who stuck and we actually felt like was a second father figure to us. And by the way, my mom and this guy were not married, but we called him our stepdad just because he had been in our life for so long, and that is how I think of him. Well, like I said, my stepdad had always taken great care of my sister and I, and just to give you an example, well, when my sister and I would go up to visit our mom, my mom and my stepdad lived about 2 hours away from my dad's, and my stepdad would literally come and pick us up every single time because my mom would not want to drive the 2 hours to come and pick my sister and I up for us to stay the weekend. And whenever she would sober up, all she would want to do is go over to her friend's house and do more drugs. So my stepdad did not want us around that at all. So he would always make plans for us to do stuff so that way we wouldn't be in the house around her and stuff like that. And here's the thing, my stepdad, I literally commend this man so much, if that's even the right word. Even though he had a lot on his plate dealing with my sister and I and literally driving a 4-hour drive to go and pick us up and bring us back, he would never say anything bad about my mother. Never. Anytime that my sister and I would talk shit on our mom or be like, oh, I'm so pissed off at her because she's doing this, he would be like, well, give your mom a break, she's having a really hard time and stuff like that, and just make up excuses for her. And it's like, it was astonishing. But yeah, no, overall he was just a really good person, and my sister and I literally love him to death. Well, eventually, one of my stepdad's friends became homeless and they needed a place to stay, so he had let him stay with him and my mom. Well, it turns out, I think a month or a few weeks later, my stepdad found out that my mom was this guy, you know, my stepdad's good friend, and he was literally heartbroken about this because pretty much everything that he did was for my mom. He bought a house for my mom so that way they would have a nice place to live. He was overworking himself and pretty much killing himself at a factory so that way he could make a living for my mom and us kids whenever we went up there. Like, she would rather run around with some hippie who has a bunch of kids to a bunch of different women than stay with the guy who stepped up to the plate for literally years. That is one thing I will never forgive my mother for. Never. So anyways, they broke up. And because my dad knew that my mom was on drugs at the time, he would not let us go visit her. He did not want us anywhere around that, which is very understandable. But because my dad knew how my stepdad had taken care of us and stuff like that, he was fine with us going to visit our stepdad. So the one weekend, my sister and I had made plans to go and see our stepdad. But this weekend I wanted to take my best friend with me. Because in the state of Pennsylvania, you have to be 17 with a parent's signature to go tanning, and homecoming was coming up. My best friend and I were not 17. Well, up in this little ass town, they didn't care. They just wanted your money. Well, I had asked my stepmom if I could bring my friend with me, and she said no, but I didn't care. I was gonna get my girl up there with me so we could go tanning to look good at homecoming. Period. Anyways, that day after school, my stepmom had work, and by the way, our parents were very, very, very strict. Like, we made up this whole plan so that way she could come to this place with me that's 2 hours away. Like, I had to call her stepmom and be like, hey, I really want to surprise my best friend, and take her up to my mom's house. It's about 2 hours away, and a bunch of other lies like that. I eventually got away with it. But my best friend didn't know that she was gonna have to hide in my closet whenever she got to my house, because my stepmom, like I said before, said no to her going with me. So like I said, after school, she got to the house and I snuck her in the closet. Well, my stepmom, she works a 12-hour shift. So she works from 6 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning. Well, she came in my room and she got ready at my vanity, and she had said that she needed to borrow a pair of socks. The socks were in my closet. My best friend was hiding inside of my closet, like literally smack dab in the middle of my closet. Like, so I'm standing in front of the door and I was like, oh, okay, I'll get them. So I go to go in the closet and she's like, no. She's like, I'll get them. Why are you acting so weird? Why are you guarding the closet? And I'm like, ugh! Like, heart rate is at 180, my blood pressure's high, I'm scared as because I had never done anything like this before. This was in the middle of my rebel, so yeah. So my stepmom pushes me out of the way and she just stands there for a minute. And my sister and I are looking at each other like, and then she grabs the pair of socks and she comes out of the closet and she's like, you guys are so weird. And I'm like, what the where did my best friend go? Where did she go? Well, okay, so in my closet, there was a cube shelf, but it only had 3 cubes in it, and it was just one thing, right? Right next to that, there was a cardboard box, and right above that, I had all of my coats hanging. She got into this cardboard box, because it had a bunch of old clothes that we didn't want anymore, and she crouched down and she hid there under the jackets. To this day, I still don't know how she did it. And whenever she walked out, my sister and I went over to the closet and we're like, looking for her. And she lifts up her head and I'm like, girl, where did you come from? So my stepdad eventually comes and he picks us up. And like I said, it was about a 2-hour drive up to where my stepdad lived. When we got up there, my best friend and I, we had went tanning, which was a very terrible idea because my best friend was pale. She didn't tan. No, not at all. She got burnt as hell, and if she allows me to, I will insert a picture of how burnt we got. I don't think she'll let me, but maybe she will. Anyways, now while I'm telling this part, remember not to judge me because I was literally 16 years old. Actually, no, I was 15 years old whenever this all happened. Okay, remember, I was 15 whenever this all happened. I was young, I was stupid, and yeah. Well, that night, my best friend and I were supposed to go and hang out with a few of my other friends up there. And she had never been up here or anything, so yeah. Well, my sister wanted to come with us. And remember, my sister is like 12 or 13 at the time. I got the ages so messed up, literally. So we took her with us and we didn't really want to because she was so young. Well, she eventually got mad at us because we didn't want to hang out with her and we left her at a pizza shop at 8 o'clock at night. Like I said, I'm not proud of this. I would never do this now. I literally, if I saw 15-year-old me walking away from her, I would have punched myself in the face and dragged myself back over there and made myself apologize. So my sister is pissed off, rightfully so, and now she wants to go and see my mom. My mom lives like, I want to say this town was very small. Like my mom lived 5 minutes away from where we were. It was like a 5-minute walk. So she had called my stepdad and she said, I want to go see my mom. Well, like I said to you before, my stepdad never said a bad thing about my mother. Anytime we wanted to go see her, we were allowed, which was probably not the best thing in this situation. He really should not have let my sister go there by herself, especially whenever my mom was dating this new guy. She wasn't even dating the same guy that she cheated on him with. She was dating some other guy, I'm pretty sure. So my stepdad, he takes her over there. But before that, she called my mom. She said, hey mommy, I'm in I want to come and see you. And my mom was freaking livid. And as soon as she got there, my mom bolts outside like she is pissed the off. She takes my sister into the house and I don't know how they got into this argument, but eventually it was like a screaming match between the two. My mom was trying to take my sister's phone off of her. My sister was like, whoa sis, you do not pay for this shit. Don't touch it. And yes, my sister actually had talked to our mother like that because the thing is like our mom wasn't really like our mom at the time. She was more of an acquaintance. Like we would barely talk to her. She would come in and out of our lives, and when she came back into our lives, she would just expect us to open our arms up and say, come home mom. That's not how this works, sis. So yeah, they're arguing about that, and then eventually my sister calls me and she's like, you guys need to come pick me up now. Like our mom's going freaking psycho. There are apparently needles all over the place. This was literally like a trap house, guys. When I tell you a trap house, yes, it was like a freaking trap house. I remember the one time the summer before this, I went to go and visit her at that house because I was staying with my stepdad all summer pretty much. Well, I went to go visit her one time. She was literally slumped on the couch. Like she could not remember shit. She's laying there and she's like, sorry, I'm just really tired. Like that drive yesterday was like really intense. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, girl, that drive was literally like 4 days ago. Yeah. But anyways, in this house, the only thing keeping the freaking front door shut was literally a knife. Yes, a knife. It wasn't even like, it didn't have a holder for the knife to lock the door. No, sis. It literally was a freaking knife that was just jabbed in the door frame so that way the door couldn't open on the inside. Yeah. Well then, my mom calls me and starts arguing with me. Bad idea, sis. Bad idea. She was like, you freaking lied to me. You said that you weren't going to see him, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I don't care. He's been there for us more than you have, sis. Every time that you were strung out, who would be there to go and take my sister and I camping or something like that so we wouldn't have to see you like that? My stepdad. Well, anyways, like I said, she calls me, she's freaking out. She's like, our mom's like on drugs, there are needles everywhere. My sister took the knife out of the door to try to leave and my mom ripped the knife out of her hand and started fucking pointing at her, walking closer to her. And my mom says, oh, what are you gonna do? Tell your dad that I tried to stab you? My sister says, yes, like literally her exact words. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like on the phone at the time and I'm like, girl, tell her, period. Anyways, so sorry, I'm like really getting into the shit. Whenever it comes to these situations, like especially involving my sister who's younger than me, like girl, don't do it. That is my baby, period. Anyways, so eventually my sister hangs up the phone and I do not hear from her, and now I'm getting super scared. Like the last thing I literally heard was there are needles all over the place and our mom is pointing a knife at me. So I tell my stepdad and we leave the house. And by the way, my friend is literally like, what the actual F is going on here? Luckily I had spent the summer before this in the town, so I knew exactly where everything was. So we drove to the house and my sister is like, I need picked up, like hurry up, like things are getting really bad. So we had my sister run over to the Sheets, and the Sheets was like not even a minute if you're running from wherever the hell my mom was staying. So my sister runs over to the Sheets, she gets in the car, and apparently she got out because my mom heard her boyfriend coming home. And my mom looks at my sister and she goes, you have to leave, go out the back door. She lets my sister out the back door. The reason why this was the worst night of my life is because this is the first time that I ever thought that I was never going to see my sister again. And because since my mom was impaired and stuff like that and on drugs, who would have known what she would have done, and who would have known what her boyfriend would have did if he walked in that house and my sister was sitting on that couch. Just not things that you want to think about, you know? So 5 minutes later, we are back at my stepdad's house and I get a call from my dad, and my stepdad gets a call from the police. Trigger warning right here. My mom had called the police and said that we were staying with a guy who molests us and rapes us and holds us against our will. One, I'm sorry, but that is literally so freaking disgusting. How can you sit there and tell the freaking police, I don't care how mad you are, that a guy who is literally taking care of your kids anytime that we went to visit you, that he molests us and rapes us? It's freaking disgusting. Well, a little backstory on that actually. The woman that my mom was hanging out with at the time, my stepdad actually knew her because they grew up together. This was the town that my stepdad grew up in when he was younger. Well, this woman, like I said, that my mom was hanging out with, her and her boyfriend broke up and they had a 6-year-old girl, right? Well, this woman had pretty much been coaching her daughter to say that her dad molests her. So we can see where my mom got the idea. Anyways, so my dad calls me and he's like, yeah, no, I have to come pick you guys up tomorrow. Like, even though I get to decide who the hell you guys can go and visit, they're saying that it's probably just best if I come and pick you guys up tomorrow. So the next day, my dad comes and picks us all up, and he wasn't mad or anything like that. He was more pissed off at my mom for being a psycho. Surprisingly, he didn't get mad that my friend was in the car either. He just dropped her off at her house and then we went home. But yeah, shout out to all of these step parents who step up to the plate whenever it comes to kids that aren't yours. Like my stepmom, my dad wasn't on drugs or anything. My dad is a great dad, but you know, she didn't have kids and she stepped up to the plate, you know. My stepdad, he stepped up to the plate and took care of my sister and I when we would go up to my mom's. They really just do things that they don't have to do.
You've got the most beautiful diamond. You've got the most beautiful diamond's eyes I've ever seen in my whole life. The skyline is jealous, I'm looking at you, how you shine.
Am I wrong for firing my sister after seeing her blog and not rehiring her without an apology? Basically what happened is I read my sister's blog. It was sent to me by a friend of mine who was asking if one of the characters was me. Spoiler alert, it was. It's a couple of years old and really popular. She doesn't use our family's real names, but they are very similar and use the same first letters. So think real names Kathy, Julia, Marissa, and Brad, and then the fake names being Kathy, June, Marine, and Bob. It's descriptive enough of our lives and what we do for work that my friend identified me from it. It's mostly about her and her life, but there is still a lot about us. A year ago, I had an abortion. It was during the lowest point in my life so far, and only she and my husband knew about it. She swore to me that she would take the secret to her grave. Yeah, she wrote a whole entry about it. A couple of months ago, she and her husband got laid off due to world events. I run my own business that wasn't really affected, and I offered her a job there to help her out. She's not qualified in my field, so I essentially made up a position for her so she could have a steady paycheck. She basically does data entry and other random tasks online from her home. Her blog since then has basically centered on how much she hates it. She called it demeaning work and says a bunch of bullshit about how I obviously don't respect her intelligence. I say this is BS because 1, she would need years of training to work any of the open positions. 2, I told her what she would do when I offered it, and she gushed about how grateful she was that I was really helping her. I called her and told her what I had read and how hurt I was. Her defense is that the blog is her online diary where she vents and that I should know not to take any of it personally. She actually had the gall to tell me that she is hurt that I read it. Ugh. Bitch, it's fucking public! Apparently, the right thing to do was ignore it. I told her off for telling the internet my secrets and dragging me online where I could be, and was found out by people who know me. She just said she did all her due diligence by changing the names and it wasn't her fault my friend found it. We argued for a bit, it got increasingly heated, and I fired her. I told her that if she couldn't apologize or see how she was wrong here, then she wasn't who I thought she is and she could find a job where she felt more respected. It's been a week and I haven't spoken to her at all. Her husband has been contacting me on her behalf trying to get her job back as they need the money. He claims she is sorry, but I think if she was, then she could tell me herself. My own husband is telling me I'm overreacting and she's family and I should just forget it. I don't agree. So am I the asshole here?
Am I the asshole for refusing to go to a party that was planned for me? Like most women, I had spent years fantasizing about my wedding day. So when my fiance asked me to marry him last year, I was over the moon. I spent hundreds of hours planning and arranging our perfect day.
Aww.
Little did I know that my fiance and his best man had arranged a prank. So when it came down to anyone objecting the wedding, the best man stood up and says he objected. Anyone who knows anything about weddings knows that regardless if it was a joke or not, the wedding cannot go forward if objected. So despite the best man and my fiance saying that it was a prank, we could not get married yesterday as intended. I was devastated, as all that money was now out the window and non-refundable.
Oh, no.
My soon-to-be sister-in-law had arranged an after-party at her place for us. Instead of me going, I walked down the aisle to the door by myself and took off from complete embarrassment and
Story time about how I tried to stick up for this kid on the bus, but it got me suspended. So a little background information, I was 12 and in 7th grade. So it was a Wednesday, and when school ended, I got on the afternoon bus. And there was this boy named Josh that I was friends with. So I went and I sat next to him on the bus. After like 5 minutes of us waiting for the bus driver to get back on the bus, this boy named Kai, that everybody loves for some reason, comes over and rips me out of the seat. After that, he sits down next to Josh and starts punching him and screaming at him. So I grab this kid by his book bag, rip him out of the seat, and I sit next to Josh. I put my headphones in, plug in my phone, and this kid grabs the phone, throws it at the front of the bus. And there weren't any adults on the bus at this time because our bus driver was using the bathroom. And I didn't go up and get my phone because I knew that if I moved, this kid was probably going to hurt Josh again. So then this kid starts trying to punch me. So I punch him in the stomach. An adult comes on the bus, finally, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got suspended for trying to stick up for some kid on the bus. So like I said, this kid is starting to try to punch me. So I punch him in the stomach. Finally, an adult gets on the bus. She yells at us to all sit down. And by the way, all the little fucking 12-year-olds had their phones out recording what was happening. So they look at the cameras, they were interviewing some of the kids, and Josh's sister comes up to me, and I was like, oh, shit. Hopefully she's not gonna yell at me. I don't know why she would, but still. She was like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for sticking up for my brother. So then after a little bit, I hear my name get called on the speaker. Kai, Josh, and I were all called down to the office. All of our parents were there. Kai got a 3-day suspension, and I got a 3-week suspension. Even though I literally had scratches all over my freaking arms, and Kai didn't even have a bruise on him. Well, my mom, being the boss-ass bitch that she is, she told the school that if they went through with my suspension, she would call the news and tell them that my school was letting kids get away with bullying.
Storytime about how my crazy sister tried to steal my husband and my child while I was in the army. My sister and I have always been competitive our entire lives. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me an Instagram. Her and I actually didn't grow up together. We don't have the same mother. We actually met when we were teenagers, which is not a good time to meet your sister because you're already very insecure at that time. She was always a little bit insecure about her looks, and it got a lot worse when she met me. She was always comparing herself to me and asking my dad which one of us he thought was prettier. My dad, of course, would get really upset and tell her not to be like that, but I could tell that she was always judging me. Sometimes she would make fun of the way I dressed, and if I ever wore a tank top or a crop top, she would call me McChubby. Mind you, I am not chubby at all, and even if I was, it's still so wrong to call someone that. Fast forward 10 years later, I married the man of my dreams. We have a really good relationship and a 1-year-old. I joined the army straight out of high school, and I really love it. We finally got pregnant after 3 years of trying. I was told I was going to be stationed away for 2 months. My husband luckily has a job where he can work from home, and my mother lives really close to us, so I knew I was leaving the baby in good hands. My husband luckily supports me in everything I want to do, so he didn't have a problem with this. I would see my sister from time to time, but we never really hung out or anything, and she never really made an effort to meet our baby either. Last I'd heard, she'd been in a really bad relationship. Apparently, she even had to get a restraining order, and she had to move back home to live with my dad. When I finally ended up going overseas, my husband and I would Zoom every single day. This is when things took a dark turn. My husband told me that my sister came by one day to visit, and that she was full on flirting with him, telling him how good looking he is. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. My husband told me that she came over and started flirting with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. He asked me what he should do, and I told him to just act like normal. A few days later, my husband tells me that my sister comes over with a tray of lasagna, which she knows is his favorite dish. And here's the worst part. She brought a thong bikini and sat by the pool for hours. Apparently, she wanted to get a tan. Then she asked him if they could watch a movie together, but my husband made up an excuse saying that he had to get back on his laptop for work. He even took a video of her while she was lounging in the pool, and we both laughed at it. A few days after that, he tells me she comes over crying. Apparently, some guy wouldn't leave her alone, so she asked him if she could sleep over because she didn't feel safe. She decided to walk around the house in her underwear and an oversized t-shirt. But here's what really got to me. Apparently, she was making an effort to get to know the baby, so she would go out of her way to feed him and play with him. And out of nowhere, the baby calls her mama. She never made an effort to see the baby when I was there, so why was she making an effort now? Then my sister sent me a picture of my husband and the baby asleep on the couch. And she sends me another message saying, "Your husband is so beautiful." Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. After she sent me the picture of my baby and my husband sleeping on the couch, I asked her what she was doing there. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. Then she had the audacity to tell me that she just wanted to help my husband out. I told her that he didn't need any help and that she could leave the house. That's when she asked me if I was insecure about her being around my husband since she's so attractive. As soon as she said that, I tried calling her, but she wouldn't answer. Then she decided to ignore my phone calls and messages for 2 days. So I called my husband and told him what she said. The first thing he did was reassure me and told me that I had nothing to worry about and that he would tell her to leave himself. I didn't want her to start any drama in front of the baby, so I told my husband to just let her stay another night. Instead, I called my dear dad, and I told him everything that she was doing. I even told my dad that he needed to go pick her up right away. My dad didn't even question me, he just went to get her. He knew exactly what she was like. 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from my husband laughing his head off. He tells me my dad came into the house and told her that she needed to leave with him. When she refused, my dad simply grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out of the house. And on the way out, he could hear my dad asking her what she thought she was doing. He even told her to stop walking around in her underwear around my husband. I only wish I could have seen it myself. But it doesn't end there. My sister decided to sneak out of my dad's house and back to mine. And this time she wore lingerie underneath a coat. When he opens the door, she takes off the coat, revealing the lingerie. My husband politely asked her to leave, but she said she knew he wanted her. Then he just shut the door in her face. I got home a few weeks after that, and I confronted my sister. She told me that I'm a bad wife for leaving my husband and my child, and that eventually he's gonna end up cheating on me. She denies having come to the house with the lingerie on. How should I handle the situation? Should I tell my dad or just let it go?
Am I the asshole for installing cameras without telling my housemates? I, female 20, live in a shared house with 3 other girls. Sarah, Kate, and Zoe. Kate is friends with Zoe, and the rest of us really aren't friends. While I'm on okay terms with Sarah and Zoe, I've never really liked Kate. We have a shared fridge where we have a shelf for each of our stuff. I've noticed that my food and milk constantly goes missing, and I see multiple times a week that a large portion of my food and milk is gone. It's unbelievably frustrating and also very time-consuming and expensive having to buy and cook new food. I believed it was Kate because she's always awake at night, and I noticed my stuff is missing in the morning. When I asked Sarah and Zoe, they both denied taking my stuff, and Kate got really defensive, saying I shouldn't accuse her with no proof. Am I the asshole for installing cameras without telling my housemates? I was complaining about it to my friend, and he said that he had a similar situation and he got a fridge camera. I thought this was a great idea, so I got one, placed it discreetly inside the fridge, and decided to wait a week. Sure enough, it was Kate raiding my food daily. I confronted her about it because now I had proof. I showed her the footage, told her to never do it again, and that she should repay me for what she took. She went apeshit. She said, how dare I put a camera in the shared kitchen without asking the others first, and how it's so invasive to record others in their own home. I explained it only recorded the inside of the fridge, not the whole kitchen, but she didn't care. She said she'll never be able to feel safe in her own home again, and Zoe sided with her, and they're both now calling me an asshole.
Our next post is titled, "My wife cheated on me 2 years ago and we worked through it. Now I want to leave and I feel guilty." So just over 2 years ago, my wife cheated on me with a coworker at her work's Christmas party out of town. She told me immediately the morning after. To say I was devastated would be an understatement. This happened pretty much immediately prior to our country going into lockdown, so we were stuck together. I was in a bit of a daze at the time and just kind of went through the motions. I was angry and miserable, but also wanted to understand why she would do it. Hence it made sense to work through it at the time, seeing as we were seemingly stuck together. To her credit though, she did everything possible to make it right. She quit her job, cut off all contact with a coworker, offered to go to therapy and counseling, and even admitted to what she did publicly. I never asked her to do this, and her mother and sister were very close to her and were appalled. She became much more loving and considerate, and even offered to let me sleep with someone else. I was actually upset with this suggestion, but she was saying it only out of desperation. Fast forward to now, 2 years later, and by all accounts, things feel like they're going back to normal again. At least for her. She is no longer moping around the house, stepping on eggshells in conversation, breaking down when anything regarding cheating happens. She started crying while we were watching a soap where a wife cheats on her husband. Unfortunately, I feel like this return to normalcy has reopened the wound. I think about that night more these days than I did during the previous 2 years. I don't know why, but I think that society returning to a bit of pre-2020 state has made me feel like I've gone back in time to that evening. I can't stand to look at her anymore. Not in a "she disgusts me" way, but in more of a "why are you still even here" kind of way. I feel guilty for wanting to leave now after all the work that she put in, even though logically I know I shouldn't. I feel like I'm the bad guy for wanting to end the marriage after the work she has put in. I know people will be able to easily say that she made her bed, etc., but I'm still really struggling with the idea of leaving her for her sake. I don't hate her for it, but I don't think I love her anymore, and I know this will destroy her. Part of me wishes I was strong enough to have left when it happened. Anyone been in a similar situation or have any advice? Thanks in advance. You can't help feel the way you feel. Her effort to make things right is completely admirable, but ultimately, a relationship is two people and two sets of feelings. Staying for her sake helps no one. She will sense when you were there for the wrong reasons, and it will cause a brand new set of issues. If you don't love her, then leave. It will hurt in the beginning, but if you don't hate her, then you wouldn't want her to be deprived of love, and you deserve to be in a place where you trust and love fearlessly. Staying for the sake of never works in a good way. Be kind in the break, but don't stay for some misguided idea that you're a knight in shining armor. You will both survive and thrive. And OP says, "Thank you for the response. This has helped." And for what it's worth, calling it quits at this point doesn't mean that either of you have wasted the last 2 years. You have both clearly done a lot of work on yourselves, and that is great. Just because you were incompatible doesn't mean that you failed. You deserve to be happy. I have never worked through cheating. I was never strong enough to do that. I have always been the type to believe that if they cheat on you once, and you go back, they know they can get away with it. It's really not hard to stay faithful. Whenever I'm seeing someone, I just make sure that I bring them up when I'm talking to the opposite sex. That's usually enough to get them not to flirt with you. And OP says, this is how I feel too. She has gone to massive lengths to prove that she is remorseful, but now, after all this time, I just feel none of this would have mattered had she just not screwed up in the first place. It's like I'm almost angry at her that I stayed with her, which isn't her fault. I should have left immediately, and I kick myself for not doing so. This is why cheating is a deal breaker for so many people. Getting past the betrayal is almost impossible, even if you try, and the breakup would be the consequence of her actions. A lot of people find themselves in your situation. They don't immediately leave because they've been blindsided and everything is too much to process. But once they come to terms with the betrayal, they can no longer look past it. Don't see the last 2 years as wasted. If you had left that night, you may still have been suffering from the trauma of betrayal. You've had a chance to work through it, seen her remorse, and fallen out of love with her organically. It will be difficult for her. She has done all the right things since she cheated, but reconciliation is never guaranteed. It will be better for her too for you to split before true resentment sets in. And OP says, thanks, I appreciate the response. While I'm glad that I tried to make it work, I almost feel like I've led her on by staying. It's not logical, I know, but I'm glad to hear so many people validate me that I don't have to feel bad if I leave, even now, years later. And now, on to the update. Thanks to everyone who commented on my previous post. I was surprised how much people cared about my benign marriage problems, but it helped me a lot. I checked this account out today to see what the responses were since last week, and was taken aback by the number of people who wanted an update. The day after I posted, I talked to my wife and laid out my feelings. I mentioned some of the points that people on my previous post had articulated very well that resonated with me. I told her whilst I had forgiven her, I was struggling to forget what happened, and the fact that we were seemingly going back to normal had triggered something in me, and now I couldn't stop thinking about it. I said that whilst I do appreciate all the work she put in to try and save our marriage, I couldn't continue anymore. I mentioned a point that someone on my previous post said, that whilst we were in lockdown, it almost felt easier to just ignore the issue to some degree, as I would always know where she was or what she was doing. But recently, for the first time since it happened, she's going into town and visiting friends, and my mind is just running at 100 miles per hour while she's out. Who is she with? Why is she slightly late home, etc.? And I haven't had to confront these feelings before. She cried, I cried. She begged me to stay, I cried again. We spent what felt like hours just sitting together in the living room, not speaking at points. She asked the same questions multiple times. Do I still love her? Will we ever see each other again? Is there anything we can try to make this work? And I think eventually she was doing it to delay the inevitable. She is now staying at her mum's house, and I'm going to file for divorce. I know it's easy to lay all the blame at her feet when you are the one outside looking in, but I feel just as bad today as I did the day that I found out what happened. I am heartbroken again, and I know full well I'm going to question myself if I've made the right choice. You can tell me it is the right choice all you like. There is no way that I'll ever be sure that this was the right choice. There are no winners with this crap. Everyone is miserable, everything sucks, and I'm here reliving the most painful experience of my life for the benefit of a bunch of internet strangers who probably only want to read about the drama and have no reason to care about me personally. I don't mean to come across as bitter. I had lots of genuine supportive comments on my previous post. I'm just really struggling right now. I won't be using this account or responding here again after this post, thanks to everyone who commented on my previous post. TLDR, wife cheated 2 years ago, originally worked through it, but now I've decided to end the marriage. Everybody loses. And now in the comments, sorry you were going through this, buddy. I truly hope you find happiness with someone else in the future. I went through something similar. You did the right thing, as difficult as it will be. I'm glad you updated us, and I'm wishing you healing on your journey. Gosh, I wish people understood the pain that comes with cheating. Not just the pain, the loss. Because the loss keeps the pain around on both sides. Unfortunately, it's very rare that cheaters show any kind of remorse. Usually that kind of behavior comes with a usually covert sense of entitlement. The situation with this guy and his wife was probably the best case circumstance, and honestly, it still sucks terribly for both parties. I just hope his days to come, once the weight of it all is off, are better. Sounds like she did everything she could to build their relationship back, but I can't blame him for his decision. It's hard to stay in a relationship when the trust is gone. Sadly too, it's just a hard switch in some people. They just cannot feel the same way about the person. No amount of work sometimes. Exactly. No amount of work would really fix it, and it's really not worth trying to fix at that point. And honestly, I think there is maturity in OP deciding to end it when he realizes that he just doesn't trust her. He mentioned that when she goes to town or out with friends, his brain goes into overdrive, thinking about where she is and what she's doing, and since he obviously felt so bad about it, he probably could have started setting stipulations or check-ins or whatever, and she would do it. Instead, he recognized that the trust just wasn't there and decided to leave instead. I think couples can move on after infidelity, especially when they confess immediately versus getting caught, but it requires buy-in from both parties. The cheating one needs to build trust back up, but eventually the cheated-on partner has to decide if they actually trust them again, and then move forward from there. Phone and location monitoring makes sense, but to me that's short-term and not sustainable for the rest of the relationship. Eventually, you just have to decide if you can trust them to go on business trips, have nights with their friends, etc., without extensive monitoring. If you can't after years, then I don't think the relationship can survive. It's not fair to either party, and it's best just to go separate ways. Trusting my partner is very important to me. If I'm in a situation where monitoring her phone and location makes sense, even if it's only short-term, then it's already over. Relationships should be a partnership. If you can't stand on equal footing and need to monitor your partner, then it's not really a partnership anymore. The dynamic is broken. Then you have to ask yourself if this relationship can still really ever provide what you need from a partner again. If not, it's best to end things. Alright, and that's where I think I'm going to end today's story. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Am I the asshole for getting upset with my husband after he told me nothing will change while I'm pregnant? So me, 26 female, and my husband, 28 male, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together. And 3 weeks ago, I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago, me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminds me to go through the house and make sure all the lights are off. Now, he can be a little lazy at times, and it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything, and he was literally standing by the door. He then tells me, no, this is what is expected of you every night. I was just a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like, just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change, and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work? He wasn't yelling or anything, he was just talking to me quietly as if I was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. This rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this? He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work at the moment. My job was not paying enough to justify me going in, so I am a full-time college student. He ended up saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally, it's a mother's job to push through, and if he helped and babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby. There was a moment of silence before he started crying, and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. What a bitch. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do, he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So, am I the asshole for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it? Like, oh, this is making me mad. This is making me mad. Ew, I've never gotten this upset over a story. That's so fucking, like, that behavior is just disgusting.